We are very sad to report breaking news right now. Nancy Reagan, the former First Lady of the United States, has passed away. Very sad moment for all of us, especially those of us who covered Nancy Reagan so many of those years, those wonderful years when her husband was President of the United States. Nancy Reagan has passed away at the age of 94. We're going to have extensive coverage of Mrs. Reagan, beginning with a look back at her remarkable, remarkable years.
Ronnie and Nancy, it was truly an American love story.
I can't imagine marriage being any other way but the way that Ronnie's and mine was. And I guess that's unusual.
A little bit of a miracle too, right?
Yeah.
Something in the gods brought you together.
Fortunately.
A relationship not based on politics or power, but simply admiration and affection.
Together we're going a long, long way.
Born Anne Frances Robbins in New York City, she lived and grew up in Chicago, known by the nickname Nancy. As an adult, she headed west to Hollywood to become an actress.
She signed with MGM. She became part of that family.
At first, Nancy Davis was busy, but in 1949, she found her name on a list of suspected communist sympathizers in danger of being blacklisted from the business. The person on the list turned out to be another actress with the same name, but Nancy wanted reassurance. She turned to a friend for help, who set up a meeting with the president of the Screen Actors Guild, a dashing leading man named Ronald Reagan. And thus began one of Hollywood's and Washington's most enduring romances. In fact, one of her last screen appearances was playing opposite her future husband in a movie called Hellcats of the Navy. Soon after, they wed. They raised a family, including their children, Patty and Ron Jr., and her husband's two children, Maureen and Michael, from his previous marriage to Jane Wyman. In 1966, Ronald Reagan began a second career as a full-time politician and was elected governor of the nation's largest state, California.
Discharge the duties upon which
Nancy was always at his side and always gazing at him with that loving stare.
it was for real. That wasn't an actress. The adoration that they had for each other.
Congratulate you, sir.
That I don't remember thinking anything except that, my gosh, here he is, and he's president.
My Ronnie.
My Ronnie.
After her husband's presidential inauguration, Nancy Reagan's signature was appearing in designer gowns, especially red ones. She also redecorated the White House, both moves drawing heavy criticism. But she had her own special grit, especially after an assassin's bullet struck her husband. She never left the hospital. Few knew then how close the president came to dying, just a couple of months into his first term.
Yes.
Touch and go.
Yes, it was. I almost lost him.
She also battled breast cancer and survived. Through it all, she had many admirers, and some critics too. Chief among them, her husband's former chief of staff, Ronald Reagan, who wrote a blistering book about her, including the fact that she sometimes consulted an astrologer.
He's chosen to attack my wife, and I don't look kindly upon that at all.
She also used her influence to launch an anti-drug program, which was reduced to a simple phrase. When a young girl asked for advice and the First Lady said simply, "Just say no."
I didn't mean that that was the whole answer, obviously, but it did serve a purpose.
After she and her husband left Washington, she needed her stamina more than ever after Ronald Reagan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
It's sad to see somebody you love and have been married for so long, and you can't share memories. That's the sad part.
Through it all, she never lost her optimism.
Do you ever feel that fate treated you badly?
No, No, when you balance it all out, I've had a pretty fabulous life.
In 2004, President Ronald Reagan died. In one of her final public appearances, the celebration of the centennial of Ronald Reagan's birth, she said,
I know that Ronnie would be thrilled, and is thrilled, to have
all of you share in his 100th birthday. Doesn't seem possible, but that's what it is.
Nancy Reagan, a strong woman in her own right, remembered also for her steady, unflinching devotion to her husband, both in and out of the spotlight.
At the 1996 Republican National Convention, Nancy Reagan made an emotional tribute to her husband, stricken with Alzheimer's disease. It moved the delegates, it moved the nation.
So let me close with Ronnie's words, not mine.
And it showed that part of her legacy would be how she carried on his.
Never forget your heroic origins, never fail to seek divine guidance, and never, never lose your natural, God-given optimism.
It was that optimism that carried Nancy and Ronald Reagan to the end. Ronald Reagan died June 5, 2004. Nancy shared her grief with the nation. Mrs. Reagan's journey began as Anne Frances Robbins in 1921. After graduating from Smith College, she became an actress, appearing on Broadway and in several Hollywood films. On March 4, 1952, she married Ronald Reagan. The Reagans would make only one film together. It would be her last, in 1956, Hellcats of the Navy. The new Mrs. Reagan soon shifted roles to wife and mother, to Patty and Ron Jr., and stepmother to Michael and Maureen, from President Reagan's first marriage to actress Jane Wyman. Maureen died of cancer in 2001.
I, Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan was sworn in as the 40th President of the United States in 1981. Nancy right there by his side. She brought some Hollywood glamour back to the White House, but her style as First Lady wasn't always appreciated. She was criticized for accepting $1 million worth of designer dresses and expensive china. Mrs. Reagan was always fiercely protective of her husband. After he was shot in 1981, she became obsessed with his safety. One former chief of staff revealing that Mrs. Reagan consulted an astrologist to plan the president's schedule. She even coached him on what to say to reporters.
Doing everything we can.
As First Lady, she also campaigned against teen drug and alcohol abuse with the now famous slogan, "Just Say No."
All of us thank you and President Reagan for helping us just say no to drugs.
In later years, she turned that activist streak to a cause many Republicans disagreed with, stem cell research, which could someday help others with Alzheimer's.
The Republican Party was not the center of her life, Ronald Reagan was. And she saw an immediate application, potential application of stem cell research to the person she cared about most in all the world.
Her public perception has undergone a profound transformation over the years. Widely viewed in her final decade as a leading political light, she was endlessly courted by Republican contenders, constantly cited as a paragon of genuine conservative virtue. But what Nancy Reagan will be most remembered for? The essential cause from which she never wavered, providing iron strength and absolute devotion to her husband.
But oh, my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way.
And they did go a long, long way. Nancy Reagan, dead today at 94.